You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, and joining us after a football season's hiatus is Eric Woolley out in California. Eric, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Andrew?
I'm good. I'm glad you're back.
I'm back.
Stanford football's over, so maybe you'll come back to the podcast more often.
I will try.
Okay. But we are in the midst of our series of kind of off-season interviews. There's not a whole lot of news going on right now unless you want to look at dinosaurs being placed on a roller coaster train in Florida or listen to park opening dates. But we've got a really great guest on this week's episode of the podcast, and he is a 30-year veteran. I prefer to call him a seasoned veteran in the attraction design industry. Dave Cobb is joining us on the podcast. Dave, how are you?
I am glamorous. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Everything going well out there in sunny Southern California?
Oh, gestures wildly to everything going on in the world. I'm doing about as best as I can, as best as most of us can, so I can't complain,
I love it. So, Dave, obviously, we're nerds. I mean, this is kind of what our theme park.
No, really?
Yeah. Our audience and us in general, we're theme park nerds. We want to know everything. So start at the very beginning. And it was a cold, rainy day in 1960. No. Your background, obviously, you got your start in the industry. You were at Universal Studios Hollywood, and one of your first jobs was a studio tour guide. What do you remember about that?
A lot. It was a formative place to start my career. It was pretty innocuous getting the job. I had no intent beyond, hey, this is a nice summer job. I got it my first summer out of high school, and got to work in a fun place and tell stories all day, right? And it was as that park was transitioning to a theme park. Like, it was still, when I started working there, it was still just the Universal Studios tour. They hadn't done the rebranding to Hollywood, which was in order to differentiate themselves from the burgeoning Florida park that was in development while I was there. So it was a really interesting place to work, and I took the job because it was also I could actually work on a studio lot. And at the time, coming out of high school, I was going into film school, and I found out I was doing cinema studies, and thought, oh, I'll have access to a lot. I can go check job boards, try to pound the pavement, try to get production work and production offices and grunt work and be a PA and that kind of thing. And so it was really kind of an open door to that. The tour guides tended to be either filmmakers or actors, right? There were a lot of actors that worked there because it was also very flexible if you had, auditions or whatever. And so that was my first gig, really. I mean, if you really want to put a fine point on it, my real first gig that's close to it was when I was like, what is it in California, 14 or 15, you can get a working permit when you can start working. And my first gig was actually, this is going to age me, but do you remember when, first of all, Sears? Do you remember Sears? Nobody remembers Sears.
Yeah. Sears might still be around.
Are they? I guess they are. Do you remember when Sears used to have a little pop-up called the Halloween shop at Sears that sold Halloween costumes? And it was for like 3 months, right? It would end near the end of summer, they open up. My first job was that, and the reason I took it is because I got to dress in costume every day. I got to, I could either bring my own or pick one off the rack or whatever, but they encouraged everybody to wear. So starting in like August, I'm like, I get to wear a costume? Yes! So, and that's super nerdy and sort of relates to me being a theater kid at that point, theater nerd. Yeah. That's what I was in high school. And the amount of times in that job that I dressed as the Rum Tum Tugger from Cats is an embarrassing amount. But the studio tour, I thought it was a parlaying into movie production, but in a way it was showing me a giant theme park-like operational venue and how it works and how people enjoy it and what they like about it and what works and what doesn't work, what breaks down, day-to-day operations. Working at guest relations was a real education. I could write a sitcom just based on that one position in the park. I've always wanted to do that. Like, remember Taxi? I always wanted to do a version of the sitcom Taxi, but in like a theme park break room. So somebody steal that and sell it to Netflix. It's a great idea.
Are there other people like that you have worked with later in the creative side of the attractions industry who also got their starts on Universal Studio tram tour operators? I feel like I've heard that before. Like that's a common starting place.
Yeah, Steve Tatham, who is was a creative executive at Universal and Universal Japan for a very long time. He was a tour guide with me. He's one. Yeah. Adam Bizark, who you probably have heard of, he was a tour guide right before me. So yeah, and it's like you hear about the Jungle Cruise skippers that go into WDI. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's a very similar thing. And not just that though. You would be surprised how many people work in the design and production side of this attractions industry that come from operational positions as first jobs, or like, you know, guys who come out of engineering school and work in maintenance at the parks on rides, but the maintenance guys end up working on attractions as they open, commissioning them, and then they sort of become engineers that work on the development of attractions a little earlier than installation. So it is an ecosystem that you can get into. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm telling people now. And students coming out, there's all these programs now for themed entertainment design, and they're coming into an industry that's frankly a little decimated and is going to be really slow to come back. And I'm like, you know what? You know what's going to come back first? Operations. Go work in operations, learn how a place works. Even if it's as a ride op, do it, because it's really, 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 really valuable.
And kind of in that same regard, and again, this comes from a lot of stalking of your LinkedIn page, but I know you had some involvement on the Hollywood version of Back to the Future: The Ride, which I know is one of Eric's favorites. But you know, what was your involvement there? And kind of, obviously, that's a classic attraction that it's kind of got a cult following in the theme park fandom.
Yeah.
You know, how were you involved, and what do you miss about it?
Well, it was a entry level office position. I was a PA, basically. It was an assistant project coordinator. But how I got there is really interesting. So obviously, I'm of the age that I was a big Back to the Future nerd. The first movie came out when I was 15. I rode my bike to the local theater like 4 times that summer to see it, and you know, like I love the movie. And then as I was in college doing production, I would get freelance production work on movies. I ended up working on Back to the Future 2 and 3 for like 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Just as a assistant down the line camera department guy. I was a nobody, but like one of the hot new hires that works for a few days on some of the bigger scenes. So I was actually there during the 2015 hoverboard scene for like 2 days, you know. Oh. So and meanwhile, as a tour guide, I'm driving through Hill Valley every day for like 5 years. So Back to the Future is sort of in my veins in a way, and one of the perks of being a guide when you've been there for a while is you end up doing VIP tours, and that's for not just celebrities but also like executives from the park or from the studio. Yeah. And one of the guys that I gave a lot of tours to, I gave him a tour to him, and we ended up sort of hitting it off, and he's a really nice fella, so he would ask for me whenever he would bring family in from out of town. Became sort of work friends, right? A guy named Warren Holcomb is his name, and he was, I think, development executive for the real estate end of the park business. So the actual properties the parks are in, et cetera, et cetera. And he was super nice. And I had heard wind of the park being developed in Orlando. And so it was still in construction. And so I said, hey, I'm going to be in Orlando with my family for a Walt Disney World visit. Is there any way I can, get a sneak peek? And he's like, yeah, sure. So he sets up he gives me a phone number, and I call when I get there, and it's this project coordinator there. She's like, yeah, come on by, gives me the address, and it's the production trailers for the construction. And they give me a tour of the model. So I saw the model for USF. I have an awesome picture of me in the worst sort of 90s clothing you've ever seen. And was like fascinated by it and asking what all the attractions were. And then they took me in a golf court and sort of brought me a little bit into the site, but it was mostly mud and steel going vertical at that point and nothing to look at. But I went home really impressed with, wow, this is not this tiny, sleepy little studio tour that started in the 60s. They're really getting into the big leagues here. And I'm very excited, right? So, because I got a pitch of all the attractions ahead of time, and this is before any of the attractions has sort of hit any of the press. And so, I come back and I tell my friend Warren about that over the next time I have a tour with him, and he's like, "Great, that's a department here that's called Planning and Development. It's now called Universal Creative." Yeah. But I said, "Wow, those people must be really talented. That's awesome." And then I filed that away, And then a few years later, the Orlando park opens, and then like a year later, I guess Back to the Future opens, and I'm like, well, now I got to go because Back to the Future's open. It's one of my favorite movies. So to say it had an impression on me writing it is a vast understatement. And the thing I'll relate it to is I was at the opening of Star Tours on opening weekend when it had that 60-hour opening party.
Yeah.
I was 17 years old. It opened on my birthday, 17th birthday. So I went, my friends and I slept in the car and in shifts and came into the park at like 3 a.m. because it was only a 3-hour wait instead of a 6-hour wait at that point. I like to tell people I got in line. If you know the park, I got in line for Star Tours at the train station on Main Street. Line went all the way down. And I remember riding that. And I kind of intellectually knew what motion simulators were because my dad was in the military and I knew that they existed. But they were only the versions of them that had been in the public realm were really kind of not great. Like they'd be at a mall or something, you know. I remember coming off of that, and it wasn't just that it was a simulator that impressed me. It's like, holy crap, I was just in the trench battle that I have obsessed about since I was 7.
Yeah,
and it was a way to tell a story that I already loved without retelling me that story, and my head just exploded, right? And it started a whole new trend of IP and attractions, and all that's great. The same thing happened at Back to the Future on an even grander scale because it's Omnimax and it's more aggressive and it's a sequel and it has all the original talent in it. And I was just like, oh my God, this is not what I expected at all. Like, this is incredible. And I just wrote it a million times. And I came back home and I had another tour on my schedule with Mr. Warren. And I just like nerded out all over him. I'm like, who the hell made this? This is incredible. And he said, oh, I know just the person you need to beat. And I'll set you up on a lunch here on the lot. So a couple days later, I have lunch with somebody and their name is Steve Marble. And he's one of the show producers, one of the producers of the ride. And we meet and I am speechless and blabbering and nerding out all over him in the most embarrassing way. I won't stop talking for like, I'm speechless and then I won't stop talking for like an hour about how much I loved it and how much I love Back to the Future and blah, 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 right? And he was super nice and gave me all this inside information about it, told me about Doug Trumbull's involvement in the ride film and how the film was made, which is insane because it was all motion control. And it was like what you saw on screen was like 5 different passes on on different strips of film that were then optically composited so they can get the smoke and the right lighting. And like, it was nuts. It was absolutely insane. I'm just beaming with like nerd happiness after this lunch. And I don't think anything of it. And I go back home and there is a message on my answering machine. Remember those answering machines?
Absolutely.
Our listeners might not, but
yeah, there are these boxes at home. Anyway, so there's a blinking light and I play back the message and it's Steve Marble, who I just had lunch with. And he's like, we're building it here in Hollywood and we've got an assistant coordinator position. It's just an office job, but it's yours if you want it. And I call him back and I'm like, sure, I have no idea what I'm getting into, but that sounds fun. Okay. And it's it's like minimum wage. Like it was barely more than what I made as a guide, but I ended up having a 2-year education in how an attraction gets built. And because it was a lift, if you will, of what they had already done in Florida, except for the architecture, the building's different for structural reasons. But because of that, the creative team was not very big. It was a pretty skeleton crew. And so that meant a lot of us wore a lot of different hats. And so at a certain point, they were like, hey, Dave, can you help the architect lay out the queue and find out where to put all the signage in the queue, the panels of Doc Brown's, inventions that we're going to make? Hey, could you come up with Doc Brown inventions to put on some of those things? And here's an artist to work with you. Hey, can you help prop out the holding rooms before you get on the ride with the hoverboards and signatures from Doc Brown on photos? Can you do those signatures to just make up something and make it consistent between all the? And I'm like, I'm 21 and being asked to do like, and it wasn't just me. There was a couple of people that were just new at this. Another guide friend of mine, Dave DeVos, who actually recently posted amazing video behind the scenes of the Star Trek experience in Las Vegas to YouTube. That's on my YouTube channel. That shows you how the transporter effects work after all these years. Now it can be told. It was all this behind the scenes stuff because he worked with me on that and he worked with me on Back to the Future. And so we were both looking at each other like, how do we get this job? People do this for a living and get paid for it. And that even went to like helping with the programming and like sitting in the DeLoreans and helping with the motion programming, because they couldn't lift the program from Florida because it was a different structure, different motion bases. They had been re-engineered.
Oh.
So for various reasons, but so it's the same ride, but it's not the same ride, right?
Yeah.
But so I all of a sudden got asked to participate in this creative process for these things, and was just a kid in a candy store, right? And then that turned into, I gave tours of the building to dignitaries before it opened. Bob Gale, the writer producer of the movie, calls up the office and says, "Hey, when do I get to come up and ride a test ride?" And they're like, "Go ahead and bring him up, Dave. You can give him the tour." So I meet Bob and take him on rides like daily as we refine the program. Like it was a dream job that I would have done for nothing. But it opened my eyes to, oh, this is an industry and this is a job that people do for a living, and I had no idea. And yet it leveraged the things I knew: storytelling, relating to cinematic IP, my love of theme parks, just growing up in the shadow of Disneyland and working at Universal as a guide, and it sort of leveraged those things. But here's the kicker, and this is the part that is mind blowing that this happened, but it's true. My dad was at the opening with me, and it was an amazing guy, and he's beaming with pride, and we're sitting there after the ride having our cocktail, looking at the opening day celebrities and all the people that are there, and he goes, "Well, yeah, this is you should be familiar with this stuff from not only the military stuff but that I did, but this stuff I did for WDI." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he didn't. And it's not like he had some secret career as WDI. That's not the joke. He placed people there in engineering and project management jobs. He was a headhunter, and so he would often have meetings there and placed a lot of. And he would always tell me about it. "Oh, I placed this guy, and he was one of the engineers on Space Mountain or whatever." I never really put two and two together. It always sounded like engineering and math to me, so I didn't. Really listen. And he says, "No, you don't remember that time that I took you over there?" And I'm like, wait, remind me. He's like, "You were 8 years old, and I picked you up at school, and I had one more meeting to go to. So I pawned you off on a nice secretary at 1401 Flower in Glendale. And while I went into my meeting, she gave you a tour of the Epcot model."
Oh,
and I'm
my
like, "You don't have
gosh.
pictures of this?" And he's like, "No, you're not allowed to take pictures. Who carries a camera with them in 1978 anyway?" And it was that moment in Ratatouille when he eats the thing and zooms back to his childhood. I suddenly remembered it. And I went,
"Oh my,
holy crap." I just didn't put two and two together. Being a theater kid and being in the movies, thought I wanted to get into special effects. I didn't see this industry as a thing that any of that related to. Stupidly. Nowadays, it makes sense. But I was just a dumb kid. I didn't really get that. And not until I actually did it for 2 years at Universal did those tumblers, cosmic tumblers in my head sort of fall into place. So it really was absolute blind stinking luck that I got into this industry. It was timing. It was the right time, the right place, and me just faking it till I make it and saying yes to a job that I didn't know how to do.
I mean, it sounds like another good reason that if people are interested, get a job in operations, because you might end up giving a tour to somebody who then remembers that you're really interested in this and makes a phone call or sets up a lunch.
There are so many Imagineers and Universal creative employees who came from the park. They are absolute. It's not a direct conduit. It is still about timing and skill set and all that, And I guess my skill set that got me the job is I have the gift of gab. So I told a good story, which is what I do now. I'm a professional storyteller in a way. But it is literally about keeping your eye open and it's such a broad industry. It isn't just theme parks anymore. It's museums, it's cultural attractions, it's pop-up events, it's Meow Wolf, it's all of these things, right? So there's plenty of ways to connect yourself to the development of these, but a lot of it, for many people, I know it starts in operations and being there, being present in it.
Wow. I'm also just kind of sitting here with my jaw open from the Epcot model story still. So,
holy crap! Like I was such an Epcot nerd as a kid too. That big hardcover book that came out in 1982. I had a copy of that is now well, if I still had it, it would be like mint first edition, but I lost it years ago. It's been in reprints though. I have the reprint. I'm kicking myself in on the original. I probably drew all over it as a kid, to be honest. But like, holy crap, I obsessed about that because I was a huge World's Fair nerd. I was always sad that I can never go to a World's Fair because we never really had them in the States.
Yep.
And I've been to some, now that I'm in the industry, I've been to some of the overseas ones, and it was a dream come true. But Epcot, my first trip to Epcot was in '83. I was 13 years old. It was a year after it opened. And so I was obsessed with that place. But the fact that I didn't make the jump between that amazing model that I saw, which to me represented architecture and engineering, and not the contents within that architecture and engineering, was this big gap. And it's true. A lot of people don't, still to this day, a lot of people don't know that. The internet has sort of changed that with the fandoms because they see how these things are developed. But at the time, in 1978 to 1987, when I worked at the tour, we had what? The Disneyana magazine was about it, or E-Ticket magazine, right? If people remember that in the 80s, like that was it. There was Disneyana conventions. There was no internet to learn about this stuff. And so it was handed to me on a platter, and I was lucky that it happened.
Wow. Well, I'm not gonna gloss over your in between Universal and your, what I want to call your next stop with Universal Creative with Men in Black Alien Attack. You had some great involvement with Landmark Entertainment. I know you mentioned us. You did some of the T2 3D videos in the queue. Did you get to meet Shaq for that free throw scene?
No, I did not.
Okay.
That part of the pre-show was done. Adam Bezark and Gary Goddard, they did most of that from a scripting perspective, and worked on all the media with James Cameron. I was at Landmark while that was happening, while they were finishing it up, actually, but and opening in Florida. But what happened was when they built the one in Hollywood, there was changes and there was more queue, and they actually refilmed that scene. If I believe it wasn't Shaq, it was an LA player, I think. I don't remember who, but I think they refilmed it. But I love it.
Okay.
I love the Shaq thing that he finally gets the free throw after missing it for so many years because he's got the robotic implant. But such a great gag that I don't think a lot of people registered. But if you're a sports fan, it's hilarious. Which I'm not, but it was obvious. No, so I was asked to write the extended queue, which was in Hollywood only, and it was like my first time writing towards an IP, which was fun. And I sort of made up this whole sort of Cyberdyne like marketing video, basically, about who they are. And it was just, we needed to fill another 45 minutes. And so we filmed it actually at the Landmark offices. And, it was the first time I'd ever written anything that got produced. And, I got notes that were sent from Lightstorm that probably went through James Cameron's hands. It's very exciting. But it was a Q video. It was nothing. It was not part of the main show. But it was my first exposure to something the words I put on paper are now coming out of actors' mouths. It was very exciting.
The guy who went to film school got to write a film.
Finally, a film inspired by James Cameron, I guess.
Yeah, James Cameron may have read it and surely saw it, right?
Sure. Yeah, and so Landmark at the time they did a lot of work for Universal. This is before Universal Creative became the gauntlet that it is. And this is before, as USJ and the first Florida park was finished, USJ and IOA were sort of nascent and starting. They would actually shop out concept development to other firms. And so I actually worked on early concepts for IOA and in addition to some of the things that ended up getting built, like not for Universal, but like Star Trek Adventure in Las Vegas, I did a little bit of writing. Same thing there. I only did the queue. I didn't do the main attraction, but I did the history of the future queue. My job for 2 or 3 weeks was to sit in a conference room and watch every episode of Star Trek and make notes about props or costumes or star charts or ships or anything that we could put in the queue as props or make, right. And so it was again, dream job. I get to watch Star Trek for a living. Awesome. Sure. And so it was a really interesting place to work because it was not a big owner operator like Disney Universal. It was sort of the Thinkwell of its time, to be honest. It was small and everybody was given a lot of hats. So even though I was hired there after Back to the Future, I was hired there just as a show writer because I had submitted some writing samples that I'd done for Universal. And I was just a writer, but I was eventually given a little more and a little more, and given sort of attraction creative director reins. And it actually relates directly to how I got Men in Black.
What an amazing segue. I feel like you've done this before.
This ain't my first time at the podcast rodeo, boys.
I love it. Well,
but may I say, two of the most charming, kind hosts I've had of any podcast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The check is in the mail. We'll get it to you later. But Men in Black Alien Attack, again, you've had a very storied career, but where many people know the name Dave Cobb is from Men in Black Alien Attack, where you were, I believe, the principal designer. Is that correct?
Creative director.
Creative director. Thank you.
Right.
And, a lot has been said about this attraction in the last year or so, because it recently celebrated its 20th birthday last April. I will go ahead. I will recommend anybody listening to this. We're going to link a live stream that Dave and a lot of the Men in Black team, the creative team for that live stream back in April or May, whenever you did it for the ride's 20th birthday, was insane. It was so good.
Thank you.
And then also, Dave also had a recent appearance on the Park Stop podcast with Alicia Stella. Really, really good in-depth talk there. So we're not going to, unfortunately, while we could probably sit here and talk all night, podcast budgets aren't, quite what they need to be for me to ask all the questions I want to about Men in Black Alien Attack. So we've limited it down. But one thing I do know is that the attraction went from concept to completion in just over 2 years, like 27 months.
Yeah.
What was it like working under that time frame?
Exciting, terrifying, all the emotions you can think of, really. But I didn't know any better, because I'd never really worked on something as the creative director from beginning to end. And hundreds of people, thousands of people worked on that attraction. I had an incredibly amazing team and creative partners at Universal Creative. My boss at Thinkwell, Craig Hanna, was my boss there, and Phil Hedema, of course, was the head of creative, and it was very supportive and cool. Jimmy Pickering was my art director. There was a lot of talent into that, and that is what makes that kind of time frame a lot easier. But I didn't really know any better, because I was, frankly, faking it till I make it, and just being guided by people who have done this before, which is half the battle, and very strong project management, and a clear goal, which was those 27 months. And and the reason for that was, they realized in the middle of IOA, they were very busy with IOA and USJ, and that was chugging along, and Universal Creative was getting big. The whole industry was that boomlet at the end of the 90s was massive, because you had Animal Kingdom, TDS, USJ, DCA, IOA, just nuts, right? And so that's actually how I got hired. I had pitched to Phil Hedema when I was working for Landmark. I pitched a couple of projects, sat across the table from him, super nice guy. Around the same time, personally, I had joined the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles and was a singer. And it was kind of this, not only a place to sort of come out amongst a bunch of peers of various, huge cross section of age and creed and color and all that stuff in a beautifully supportive artistic environment and a creative outlet outside of work. That was all gravy, and that was wonderful. It was a great experience to come out in. But I also made professional friends, because Phil Hedema was a singer with me, and he produced a bunch of the shows. And I don't know if you know this about Phil, but he was a Croft puppet builder for Sid Marty Krofft back in the day. And so we would build these big puppet shows that were performed in front of the chorus during certain numbers. Like we did a big Under the Sea number and did it in black light with fish, like the parks do. And he and I were Sebastian. He was the mouth. I was the arms, the crab. It was, so we literally close, but also we got very close as not only puppeteers, but as friends and sort of peers. And so I saw the side of him that wasn't just pitching across the table. He saw a side of me and what I do. And he called me up one day and said, let's have lunch. And over lunch, he's like, look, the industry is so busy right now. And our analysts just looked at our calendar and realized that we have nothing planned for the studio park the year after IOA opens. And all the analysts are like, we're going to siphon our own attendance if we don't do something.
Yeah.
And so they had to greenlight something very, very fast. And the clock was ticking, and it was 27 months. And he's like, if you're game, I think this is the right time for you to make the jump to creative director. I think you have the chops for it, for what I've seen you do at Landmark. And so that was my first big break as a creative director. But frankly, the only reason it could have gotten done in that time frame was my ignorance to what these things actually take, and just sort of doing what needed to be done, I guess, and an incredible team of people. In a career filled with very talented people, that was the bar that was set for me, was that attraction. The people that worked on that attraction with me really showed me what true collaboration is. I learned from Phil and Craig what it meant to be a creative leader. Creative directors this is not an auteur industry in the least, as everybody knows. It's like movie production. Like, yes, there's a director who has a vision, but it really is about working with every single department and every single skill set to reach a goal. And I learned all of that trial by fire, diving in headfirst, and whatever metaphor you want, on Men in Black. And I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity that Phil gave me, and for the unbelievable team. And if you ever do a Google search for Thea Award Men in Black, and you'll see the full credit list there on the website. And give every one of those people a standing ovation, because that's why that attraction is so good.
When you were getting started on that and had the timeline, did they have any bones? Like, was there anything for you to work off of?
Good question.
Other than, here's the timeline, make something.
Good question. I was hired right after Blue Sky. So John Murdy, who you probably know from Halloween Horror Nights, and Craig Hanna and Phil and a bunch of other folks at Universal Creative had done a very rough pass at Blue Sky. Blue Sky is like creative intent, storyboard, script, maybe a scratch track, but no actual layout or anything, you know. So they're like, here you go, have fun, go do it. Here's your budget. Go have fun storming the castle, right? So, but not like, boot me out and I'm on my own, of course, as I said, lots of support. But the bones we got were a couple of things. The 27 months, that was the big bone that we had to build around. Second was, they knew they couldn't do a science project in terms of ride vehicle. Like, it couldn't be something that we had to make up or overly adapt. And initially, the first pass out of Blue Sky was thinking that it was going to be the Ford POS built around the Spider-Man vehicle. And we actually did a test where we set up laser tag targets from the toy store in Spider-Man and rode through it and tried to hit them and went, nope, that's never going to work. Because it was just too hard. It was just like, if you tone it down, it's like, why are you spending this much money on this motion base if you're going to tone it down? So that was out the window. And the next one in line was, because it was working very well over at IOA, was the Cat and Hat vehicle. And so those were developed by a company called MTS. And so we were going to use the same motion base, meaning the platform and the spinning part, but everything above it could be redesigned. And what do we do? And so that was a big framework we had to build around, was that vehicle. And that led to discussions about like building size and number of scenes and attraction length. And that all related to, they wanted a certain capacity. Every attraction, usually when you start, has a desired THRC, theoretical hourly ride capacity, for the nerds out there, which I'm going to settle so many arguments because fans don't get it sometimes. It does not relate to track length. It does not relate to ride length at all. It is how many people leave the station and how often do they leave the station. Add that up to an hour and you get your hourly. It has nothing to do with track length. Ever, ever, ever. Do not argue this point on me. I've literally had people argue with me. No, but if the truck's longer, no, that's instantaneous capacity. That's how many people can be in the building. That's different. Anyway, sorry. So, but they had a goal and it needed to be a people eater, which is like, 2,000 people or more. So Cat in the Hat is not that at all.
Yeah.
Cat in the Hat is a family ride. It's much smaller. And so, and that is theoretically a 6-passenger vehicle, but as often is only filled with 4 or 5 because you're sitting next to each other. So we knew we needed discrete seats because we needed 6, absolutely. And then that led to an initial discussion that was a train that was actually 2 or 3 vehicles trained together. And we went down that road for a while, but it was like, now it just feels like a linear story. It just doesn't, it doesn't feel like Men in Black. Like, it feels like and we, for a while it was going to be the Ford POS, but really couldn't fit it into the dynamics and the shape of that size and that vehicle and make it look good. It looked too toy-like,
Yeah.
So we went down another road and employed Neville Page, who you saw on the live stream, who is now a big famous movie designer of movies like Avatar and Tron Legacy and start the new Star Trek series and all that stuff. Amazing guy, incredibly talented, and he ended up doing alien design for us as well. But he was initially hired to do the vehicles and the guns because he comes from an industrial design background initially. But when we were looking at what it was, we had a certain budget and a certain plot of land. And when we looked at a single train going through it, it was very small. It didn't feel epic. And otherwise it turns into a 20-minute ride. And it's like, we're taking all the space and it's too long, until somebody in the room said, well, if we have this much space, why don't we put in side-by-side tracks? And we did the math and it was like, oh, okay, that works for capacity. And then as we're laying it out, we're like, oh my God, this gives us some great stuff like shooting at each other. Right. And you got to understand, at the time, the theme park arms race between Universal and Disney, at any turn, Universal was going to be, how do we be better than that? How do we be better than Buzz Lightyear? How do we outdo that? Like and that was literally discussion, like what parts of the interactivity could be better. We need multiple endings, which we can do with a vehicle that rotates, right? We can shoot at each other. That's a new thing, right? So that became part of the discussion. And so it was very organic how all of that happened. We didn't come out of the box saying it's going to be this, but the framework we were given of capacity, existing vehicle, and timeline led to a lot of what you see as the final attraction.
I've got a question that I've always wondered, and I know Universal kind of does these secret tours, and I talked about it on last week's podcast with Seth Kaburski. Was that immigration room in the queue designed to give tours, or? No,
not at all. Not at all. As a matter of fact, you can tell because the undersides of the walkways in the queue aren't finished. It's like black gunite, spray gunite there for sound absorption. There's no decorative feature. I don't mind that they do, to be honest. I actually think it's pretty cool. And get people getting selfies with Bloop and Bob down there is one of my favorite things to see across the internets. So no, I actually think it's quite good they do that, and it's sort of a forehead slapping moment for us. Like, why didn't we do that? Or why didn't we have the queue go down there or something?
Use the space. After you see the space.
yeah. I mean, and of course with development of these things, a lot of things change. In there used to be there were some gags in there. There's some shadow gags behind the frosted glass. There were some animatronics walking upside down on the walkways like you see in the movie. It's all cut for various budgetary reasons. Focus on the keep your eye on the ball, which is the main attraction that really counts. And so all the money goes there. But yeah, it's I love that they do that. And I could not be happier that the crews and if the crews that work that ride are listening, you get a giant big wet kiss Valentine from me, because I love so much that they lean into their role and that they are actual agents and they play up the universe in you beforehand, and then they go all serious on the other side of the elevator, and that they are actual agents. I mean, the Haunted Mansion was a seminal part of my childhood. And the fact that the butlers and maids are also droll and lean into that gothic humor. The fact that the MIB agents do the same thing makes me unreasonably happy. And so that's not something we necessarily train them to do or wrote into the training, but it's become the culture of that ride. And it makes me teary-eyed thinking about it. It makes me so happy that they lean into that, because it's a big part of the guest experience, right? You could be a bored 14-year-old teenager in a summer job just waving people in, or you can have fun with your job and be part of the story. And they all choose the latter, and that makes me very, very happy.
Do you have a favorite Easter egg that you made just to get in there, or a favorite alien, or a favorite side of the track? What is like a Dave Cobb favorite for Men in Black Alien Attack?
I love that I'm actually a voice for a couple of the aliens. We had many voice actors, like who is what's his name, the guy who was the sound effects for Police Academy. Oh gosh,
I'm also blanking on his name, but I know who you're talking about.
Michael Winslow.
Yes.
He did a bunch and did a broad swath of weird
Like he could
sounds.
do all of them.
And then we tweaked them electronically, right? Some of them are just creature noises modified. I did not the main wormy guy in the break room. That voice is actually the guy that's, believe it or not, the voice of Spider-Man over at the Spider-Man attraction. He's a local voiceover artist in Orlando, and he did the main wormy guy there and at the door at the end. I did the one next to him going, that's me. And I'm also on the wormy guy window at the door. I'm the one on the other side of the phone going, like yelling at him. I'm the Taylor alien that goes, oh, it'll be ready next Wednesday. That's me. And I'm the alien with the sort of armor suit on in Times Square that is like, oh, ouch, hey, watch it. That guy. That's all me. And that's not by design. People need to know that that's just like, oh crap, we don't have a recording for this. Go in the booth, you do it. Like some of that stuff was planned, some of it just happened. So I'm very proud of that, and that lives on. One is kind of this is a weird one, and it's very, very personal, and it's super innocuous, and it was not meant for anything. It doesn't have any meaning beyond sort of me knowing that it's there. And that is there's many billboards in Times Square, right? There's signs and billboards, and none of it could be real stuff. It all had to be made up. And so, me and the creative team, and in particular, my document control guy, Tim Bernardi, who is probably going to listen to this. Hi, Tim. He is a hilarious guy, and he would often spitball on some of these low-hanging fruit creative ideas with me. And so he helped me come up with a lot of those things. And one of them, he's like, we need something for you, like, your window on Main Street. And I'm like, I'm not putting my name and I'm not putting my initials. We're not really supposed to do that, by the way. That's an honor to be given that thing. But if you look way in the back of one of the billboards, obviously I told you guys I'm queer, and being a larger man of size with a beard, there's a whole subculture called bears that you've probably heard of. There is a billboard for a beer called Rainbow Bear Lager.
I love it.
And that's my wink at myself going, there you are. So
that was put in by you. That was
right, and it doesn't really mean anything. There's no political meaning behind it or anything. It's just, hey, wouldn't it be fun if there was a beer named after me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's put it on a billboard. So,
I think so. I'd be curious, like related to that. Did any of the people working under you sneak in Easter eggs that you didn't know about until after things were done?
If they did, I don't know.
You still don't know.
Well, like if you look at in the video on what we called the Eggtron, which is the big video screen in the immigration room, on that, when they're showing the dossiers of all the different aliens and their names and stuff, sometimes their names are like people's names backwards. Sometimes they have a code name or a planet name or something. That's like a combination of people's initials and their extension phone number at Universal.
Got it.
That, Imagineering does the same thing. That's all over the place, like phone numbers and initials and birthdays and stuff. Wherever we needed numbers, that's all over the attraction. That's tons of. Anytime you see a number sequence or a letter sequence that isn't a word, it's probably initials and a phone number or a birthday.
Love it.
Cool.
Okay, so those goofy questions that I promised you. Obviously, the Men in Black film franchise, it's got 3 signature theme songs, 2 by Will Smith, Men in Black, and Black Suits Coming, parentheses, nod your head. And then Back in Time by Pitbull, which is Men in Black 3.
Right.
Do you have a favorite of those 3 theme songs?
Number 1, for sure. I ignore the existence of the second one because I think it's a really bad movie. Sorry, Sony. But I actually think the third one is super clever. I actually really love the time travel aspect of that one. And I think Men in Black International was a good stab at reinventing the franchise. It didn't quite land the comedy part of it enough for me, but I hope they keep doing it because I love the way they expanded the world building. I actually really like the design and the sort of multi-point throughout the worldness of it. All that makes sense. So I hope they stay on it. But that first one is so iconic, and it was Will Smith at the height of his powers. It's got the Forget Me Nots sample in the background, which is this cool R&B groove.
Mhm.
It's an earworm that I think will never get old. It's everybody learned at least part of the rap, right?
Absolutely. I
Um,
still know it.
yeah. What is it? Men in my face to face contact. Yeah, I
How to
used to
help by
know it.
me, MIB. Makes you what you think you saw, you did not see. See, we're gonna get sued now by like the Warner Music
You're right,
Group.
exactly. It'll
I
tag
think
it. Right.
that was a small enough clip. I think you're okay.
I think we're fine. But yeah,
Okay.
I love the first one. I love the original movie score. The Danny Elfman score is obviously iconic.
Yeah.
We didn't use it in the attractions for various reasons, but the attraction score sort of makes homage to a lot of that. And of course, we played the big song on the exit pathway, so you could groove along as you check your score and buy your
Yes, sir.
merchandise.
Okay. Last very important question. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, Men in Black celebrated its 20th birthday, April 2020. The attraction was closed, the park was closed.
Yeah.
In your live stream, you said you would go and celebrate the ride's 21st birthday. So now that Men in Black Alien Attack is able to legally consume alcohol, it will be in April.
Yeah.
If you could make a Men in Black Alien Attack cocktail, what would be in it and what would it be called?
Wow. Okay, so I saw you sent me this ahead of time, and I have done far too much thinking about it. And I have actually 3 cocktails. One is sort of agent themed, and that's like the classy one in the highball glass with pinky out. There's one that's sort of the tiki-ish drink, right? And then there's one that's like super sweet, over the top, has lots of garnish on it, kind of drink, right? So the first one for the agents, this would just probably be called like maybe the Agent V because it's vodka based, or just the agent or the new recruit or something. It'd be vodka, sambuca, and cherry liqueur, and with a stemmed one of those Luxardo cherries in it, like a Manhattan, and a ice sphere that's a UFO. So a custom ice cube that's UFO shaped.
Ooh.
And the flavor is, because of the sambuca, is black cherry and licorice. Because I think I needed something black in there for me. So that would be it's basically it's a reinvented Manhattan a little bit. It's like it's got that sort of flavor profile.
I love it.
Next one is for the wormy guys. And this one's super, super obvious, right? First of all, it's Kahlua because it's coffee.
Of course.
And then the twist is it's Kahlua mixed with coconut Red Bull.
Oh, wow.
Because it's Red Bull. Like, it's the most caffeine you can get in an alcoholic beverage, because that's what the wormy guys would guzzle down. So it's in a very large sort of hurricane style glass. So it's creamy looking, yeah. And so that's for the wormy guys. Then the last one I would call the Edgar. And it is creme de menthe and cream, or banana and Bailey's. I couldn't decide which of the two. So it's a very creamy drink. And then on top of it is a pile of Everclear infused gummy worms.
Oh, wow.
So bugs.
You really did give this some thought.
Oh, I did. I slept on it. Like I had. This is the short list. I had more.
Oh my.
But like, yeah. So a pile of like gummy bugs on top of a green, creamy, slimy drink.
I gotta say, those are better than the 2 ideas I came up with when I wrote this question. I had a neuralizer, which is
perfect.
It makes you forget whatever you're doing. And then the red button I had, it was a shot of tequila with grenadine on top.
Oh, both of those are winners.
That's not bad.
Hey, Universal, you are leaving money on the table. Like, why is there not a drink cart outside the attraction right now? Yeah. Money on the table, people. Money on the table.
They need to put a Men in Black bar. Maybe turn the immigration room into that and have a bar downstairs.
You literally just came up with best. Okay, Universal, if you're listening, you're getting this one for free.
And I want a job from them.
And MIB Speakeasy that is a pop-up in the immigration room that you only get if you get over 900,000, and there's a password.
Oh my gosh, this
like,
is.
And when you charge admission, like you got to pay. There's a cover charge. Got to make money, babe, and it can't be
It's
just
Orlando.
the drink. It's Orlando. This is no. They absolutely. Eric, you just came up with the best idea to improve that attraction ever, is to add a speakeasy bar in the immigration room. Like, if
the
that
only
doesn't happen,
up it needs.
that needs to happen for his 21st birthday. Universal, do it. You're leaving money on the table. Trust me, this is the best idea ever. You guys, go ahead.
I was gonna no, go ahead. I was gonna ask about high scores because I am curious what yours is because I know Andrew's maxed it out or something.
Mine's terrible. But last time I did it was probably at IAPA a couple of years ago, and I think I couldn't crack 600,000. When during ride testing, I could get up to 7 or 8, and this is a testament to how good the people that play this are. We thought, let's set the hardest difficulty. So we made the scores. We play tested for months, and all those play tests led to what is an acceptable average score, and how do you get to the 3 score levels? What is that? And we set basically anything like 700 and above, 700,000 and above was Galaxy Defender. People get that all the time now. There's no way I can get that. I'm not that good. I know where all the targets are, and I'm not that good. About the Facebook group MIB 900 Club, right?
I found out about this on your Twitter when they celebrated the 100 millionth rider pretty recently. 100 millionth
rider, which, by the way, is I don't understand that number. It does not compute to me. Okay, that's a number. I'm all right, but it's big. They reached, and how many rides get to that, man? How many rides get to 20 years? I am so humbled by that. I hope people know that I don't take that as a boast of pride. My mind boggles because we don't set out for these things to have longevity. This is especially Universal. They're known for sort of reinventing themselves every couple of years. But we set out. One of Phil Hedema's in the first meeting when I had over lunch with Phil. One of the things he said the reason I think you're the right guy for this, and it means so much to me, is that he knew from previous meetings at Landmark that I was a huge Haunted Mansion fan, and that I spoke the language of Mark Davis, and and I understood the gags, right? Mm-hmm. He said one of the things USF at the time does not have is it doesn't have its own Haunted Mansion. It doesn't have its own Mark Davis gag fest. And what better brand to do that than Men in Black? This is why you're the right guy, because you understand the humor of the movie. You understand how to translate that to an attraction experience with these alien vignettes. And so I would never go so far as to say, I'm going to say it now, but I would really never go so far as to say we set out to make Universal's Haunted Mansion. But in a lot of ways, we kind of did. And the fact that it's 20 years old now, I look back at the moment in time when I can say I was obsessed by the Haunted Mansion was when I was probably 10 or 11, which is 1980, 1981. And I had been on it enough then that I really upset. I have a tattoo about it, for Christ's sakes. I obsessed about the Haunted Mansion for many reasons as a kid. First, because it scared the crap out of me when I was 4 or 5, and the faces growing out of the wallpaper. When you finally see what that wallpaper is and its face is looking at you, I had nightmares about that face growing out of my ceiling as a kid. And then later, as a tween teenager, finding books in the library about magic and stage illusions and Pepper's Ghost, and it demystified it. It wasn't scary anymore, but it was even more fascinating. It's oh my God, how do they do that? And then as an adult, writing it over and over again and realizing that it has this amazingly arch sense of humor about death. It's don't be scared of the graveyard, come to the party. That's so sophisticated, right? And so all that together from childhood to adult is why I'm obsessed by the Haunted Mansion. But that all started when I was about 10 or 11 years old. Well, guess what? Let's say 14 to 17 is a round number, late teens. At that point, that's when the mansion was 20 years old. Well, okay, so that means there are kids that rode Men in Black at 7 and 8 years old who now 20 years later are me. And that, I can't process that without sounding like an egotistical maniac, because I really don't mean it that way. It's mind-boggling to me that it's lasted this long. And it's only lasted this long, not because of anything I did. It's lasted this long because the fans have made it their own.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the ultimate paycheck for me. It has nothing to do with what I get paid for the job. There's a point in every project I've ever worked on that I've told people about, and everybody in the industry knows this, and every artist, frankly, knows this. Anybody who makes any sort of art, there's a point when you make anything where it's not yours anymore. And you're the most important person in the room for a really long time until you're not. And then all of a sudden, the security guard is checking your badge because he's not the guy that was there during construction for 4 years, right? Like, there's a moment where we all have to say goodbye to those attractions. And I processed that for Men in Black a long, long, long time ago. But seeing it come back to me now with like I had somebody tweet me today, they did fan art. They're doing fan art as practice illustrations because they're an illustration student of all the different aliens. And they're like, I can't find good reference of the aliens. Do you have any more? I'm like, I'll check my archives for you. Like
I just happen to have all of them. Yes.
I'm like, wait, what? Like, how? We didn't go into this planning that, and that's a thing. 30 years into my career, that is such a beautiful poetic lesson for me as a creator, to understand that at a certain point, the most important story in an attraction is not the narrative we create based on the IP. It's the story that the riders and the guests have to tell about it. And that's all that matters. And it's what drives me to this day. And especially now, we live in a world now where what we like to say is our audience has an audience. That didn't happen in 2000 when the park opened. But now, because of social media and fandoms and all that, people are like the 900 Club. They make their own pins and merch and shit. I love them. They invited me to the club, and I pop in and comment every once in a while, and they're a lot of fun. But that's great. They treat me like a celebrity. I'm like, shut up. I pay my bills like everybody. Stop it. I don't work there anymore. It's not mine. But what makes me happy about that fan club is watching. There's a guy named Nick who is one of the moderators, and I hope he'll be listening to this. He's been sending me pins that they make and stuff, which makes me very happy. But what makes me most happy is he posts pictures, and he's been doing this since the parks reopened, of his, I think, 9-year-old or 11-year-old daughter, and it's their ritual to go ride and get her score to be better. And
that's awesome.
And she just got 999,999 like a week ago, and like he posts this in all caps, like, I'm crying. My daughter finally made it. And I started to tear up. I'm like, this thing I did for like 2 years that was this much of my life affects him in a way, and his family, that is a tradition for them. And none of us plan for that when we make these things. So if I just sound effusive about it, it's because I'm as gobsmacked by that kind of reaction as anybody else. And I'm incredibly, I'm tearing up thinking about it. I'm incredibly humbled by the fandom for this ride, because we don't set out for that. And the fact that it's reached that is partially because I think we made very good decisions along the way. I mean, obviously, any creative person will tell you, I know where the bodies are buried. There's a ton of things I would have done differently if I had technology from today or whatever, had more time. It's never done in my head. I always want to go back and revise things. But the fact that what it is, where we did break the pencils and say we're done and this is the thing, has resonated with people, and you really can't ask for anything better than that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think on that, we're going to pause here, but we'll be back next week with part 2 with Dave, where we're basically going to get into everything you worked on after Men in Black Alien Attack, including some roller coasters and the amazing Warner Brothers world in Abu Dhabi. For now, make sure you're following Dave on Twitter at Dave Cobb, and check out his YouTube page. Make sure you're also following us everywhere at Coaster101. Thanks as always to JM Music Design for our theme song, and be sure to join us next week for part 2 with Dave Cobb. Thanks, everybody.